South Sydney Rabbitohs. We're in for this one. It's going to be a pretty fun team, really, considering they started really well and they dropped off from the middle all the way through to the end of the season. There's some young fellas coming through that are definitely of potential value in our sides, and we're here with Scoop, and he's going to be going through his thoughts, especially on this team here. Welcome in, Scoop. Are you excited for the Rabbitohs?
Yeah, Jamie, they're going to be quite a fun team to watch. They're one of the teams that you always expect to be in the mix at the end of the year, but they had a bit of a drop off last year, and I think that we can really find some value because of that. If they have a bit of a bounce back this year, I think the signing of Jack Whiten turns that powerful left edge into something that's absolutely to be feared by any team. And I really think we could see them put some points on the board. So there could be some good bounce back options this year.
Definitely. We'll kick it off with Jai Arrow. Do you think he'll be playing a hybrid role, edge and middle, or do you think that talk of Tallis Duncan moving over there is actually real?
I He's the one cog in this entire team that I just cannot place. Like I
Mm.
had a look at what he did last year and I had a look at what he'd done in previous years, and his minutes are so inconsistent. It just depends what the team needs and who's injured at the time. At the moment in the pack predictor, I've got him starting edge, but I'm not confident on in that at all. So for fantasy, I just think he's going to be too inconsistent to really have a look at. I've seen a couple people interested in him, including a couple of high rankers, but I think that's sort of more isolated. I don't really see any safety in him.
For sure. So we'll probably follow him to see where he ends up starting, if he's going to be in the middle or on that edge. And that might help us with a couple of the other decisions in Duncan or Murray and the like. So Tom Burgess, his minutes are slowly declining there. He's likely to be on the bench, and that probably gives us an opportunity in a couple of these other guys as well. Are we avoiding Tom Burgess?
Yeah, I think this will probably one of his last years, and then he'll head off to Super League with his brothers. And yeah, just not really any value in him this year.
Yeah, it'd be a good way to finish the career. Michael Cheekham, he made some money for a lot of coaches last year at 4.99. Tough one to start with.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He did his job last year, and there's no certainty that he keeps the spot, even if he does start. So at 500K for somebody who doesn't have a lot of job security, not my cup of tea.
For sure. Damien Cook at 773. He has been a lot higher than this in the past as well. Still averaged pretty well at 56, considering the hooking position was down. What are your thoughts on him this year?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see one of two things. I think we're going to see him bounce back a fair bit because, well, he had a down year by his standards last year. Still knocked out a good fantasy scores for the most part. But yeah, just for the eye test and NRL wise, he did seem like he took a step back. We do have to factor in his age now. Um, and it just could be the beginning of his decline. But also, Souths were pretty ordinary. If they bounce back, um, Damien Cook could step up again a little bit. And I think he'll be wanting to play Origin again this year and try and push for that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. He'll likely be in the mix for top hooker options. I just don't really want to go near him at the start of the year.
Yeah, and he's going to be an interesting one as well through the middle. If he doesn't make Origin, then he'll be one of those top hookers available. If you do see Robson in there, obviously Harry Grant and the like, we're going to need a good hooker. It's like Jeremy Marshall King or Cook probably in that time, which will be fun for sure. Tell us, Duncan, there you've got him in there as a TLT watch. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, from what I've heard in recent times, he's been training to do some lock minutes with Murray moving to the edge for a little bit to preserve his stamina. But I mean, long term, they're going to want him in the team. He's a fantastic player, and they'll want him starting and in their best 13. So long term, I think he probably does move into that edge role, but I don't know if he will start the year. One to just watch where he lines up because he's already priced reasonably high for somebody who hasn't played that many NRL games. So I'm not touching him unless he looks like he's going to get a really big minute role.
Yeah, so if he's starting, then sweet. If not, then probably becomes a as an opportunity to have him at some point, likely, and that would make sense. So if they were to start Arrow on the edge, then and then move Murray to over there for some minutes, Duncan comes into 13. That probably sounds a bit more likely, doesn't it? That sort of 25 to 30 minutes, and then Arrow can sort
Yeah.
of play biggish minutes between the edge and maybe a little bit of middle, and Murray can get closer to 80 minutes, 70 to 80, splitting between the two. Considering he even actually averaged like 68 minutes already anyway, Murray last year. So Yeah, interesting how that's probably going to play out. And that sounds more likely to start considering, he played through the middle last year to be, unless, he trained the full off season at the edge. That sounds more likely. Campbell Graham at 609. What an interesting one he's ended up with. What's Brian Sini saying, NRL physio, that the procedures he's had is reserved for sort of 70 plus, the elderly there
Yeah, it was
in
something
sternum.
like basically, I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like bone marrow injections or something like that
Crazy.
because he his sternum was just taking a battering last year, and hopefully, if he's fully fit this year, not dealing with anything like that, he can go back to being that really high level center keeper, especially with the new meta. He could step up to that high 40s bracket. But on the other hand, look at that left side. If there's rumors of Kolomatangi switching sides as well and things like that, and then you've got Walker, Whiten, Latrell sweeping to the left sometimes, and then AJ finishing it off. How much ball is Campbell Graham going to get? How dominant are they going to be on left side? And will he get enough ball to do the job that he wants in our fantasy teams? So
Mm.
I think that he's going to be a keeper. Just I don't know where his full ceiling is at this stage.
Yeah, and we thought that last year too, but obviously that left side has increased and improved even more. But I suppose Kolomatangi and him were that dominant guy on the right, and now it looks like it'll be Graham is that dominant man. So he should definitely see some ball. But I suppose that defensive side now, if Kolomatangi moves over, can focus solely on Graham a little bit more than they could with Kolomatangi running those hard lines. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. And he's a hard guy to start with, but the center position, as we know, is pretty tough heading into round one here. Jai Gray, probably a 2025 type of guy, even if there was an injury or so.
Yeah, he's pretty highly touted, but I don't think we're going to see him this year. Apart from like, it'd take a lot of injuries for us to see him in a team sheet.
Yeah, with Dean Hawkins around as well. We'll go to him next at 419K. If we had an injury to an Ilias and or a Cody Walker, does he come into calculations with his decent scoring?
Oh, I mean, he has to a little bit, but he's already priced at 30. It has to be
Mm,
quite long term, I think, before we have a serious look.
definitely. Silva Havili, do you have any interest in him with some potential decent minutes there?
I really don't know how to read Havili. At the moment, I've got him sitting at relatively low minutes, but I mean, in the past, he has been pretty good for the Rabbitohs and had a good role. I think was it 2022? He pushed up towards that sort of 500K mark in the middle of the year and had some really solid minutes. So if Damien Cook doesn't end up playing 80 this year and he takes 15 hooker minutes and something like 25 minutes in the middle, then we can start to probably have a look at him and see what he does. But at this stage, with these guys fit, because we had a few guys, especially Totola, missing at times last year, um, especially with Tallis Duncan's emergence, I'm not sure there's enough value to go chasing him.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of mid-price players, isn't there? And Jacob Host is another one at 397. We spoke about Jai Arrow potentially getting that edge position. If Host was to get it, would you consider him?
Not after last year. He was almost that price. I think he was like about 350 or something. And then he just didn't do much. He got hooked at about 30 minutes in one game, scored like 7 points. And then the rest of the time he was kind of sitting along at low 30s and high 20s and not really exciting us. He's just not an exciting fantasy player.
Yeah, for sure. Lockie Elias at 517. He's up near 38 for his average. Any upside on him? It's a very big year for him, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he's been sitting there for a year or two now, and he really needs to make this spot his own. So if he can step up, um, and the Rabbitohs improve this year, he has some more attack. I also can see him pushing to sort of 40, maybe low 40s, but I mean, he's Lachlan Ilias. He's not really a noted fantasy asset these days, so I'm gonna probably pass.
Definitely. Alex Johnson, your man at 480K in a team that is likely to be better. Do you see value in him?
Yeah, I wish I could, but not after last year. Like he's this perennial huge try scorer just because he feeds off that attack. But last year he turned really into go through the hole and put the ball over the line merchant. I mean, he's always been that, but he lost some of the tackle breaks and some of the other stats he had in the past. I
Mm.
looked at him mid-year when he was at low 400s because I thought he's got a soft run coming up, Origin's coming, he can potentially score a few tries and do that. And he kind of did, but he had nothing else and he really didn't move that much. So at 480, I think he's probably going to sit around there most of the year.
Yeah, soft run, and that's when they started losing games, unfortunately. Sean Kepi, 413, feels like a bit of a plotter to me, and minutes aren't likely going to be there. He had every chance to go big minutes at Manly.
Yeah, I think he averaged 41 minutes at Manly, and now I have him averaging probably closer to 30, 35, so not really any excitement from me.
Kaloa Matangi, 661, average of 48. What are your thoughts on him?
He's been somebody that's averaged pretty much bang on 50 for a few years now, and I think there could be some interest in him if he does start the year well and the Rabbitohs go well with that switch. I find it harder to predict what exactly he's going to do, whether he benefits more from more attack or whether they cut him out with those other outside back options. But I do think that he at least could be an origin period option if he doesn't end up getting selected.
Definitely. Mamazelis at 335. Will Damien Cook ever miss any time?
Of a poor Mamazelos, I think he's been there for about what 3 or 4 years now, just
Yeah.
waiting. Re-signed for 3 more years. So look, you'd have to think he sees some game time at some stage, but is that 10 to 15 minutes off the bench all the time, or is that 5 or 6 games for high minutes instead of 2 or 3 games for high minutes? We're
Yeah.
not sure just yet.
For sure. Tane Milne, obviously just one of the guys in their backs stocks at the moment, 406K, too expensive at that, even if he was to get a spot. Latrell Mitchell at 747, 54.3 is the average last year. And obviously a split year for the Bunnies, as we said, a really good start, then a really low-ish finish for them, obviously missing the 8. What are your thoughts on Latrell coming into round 1 specifically?
Yeah, Latrell's always been a wing fullback gun. I think he's averaged about 55 for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's just we kind of forget that he does that because of how inconsistent he can be. The goal kicking really helps him, really props him up a bit, because he isn't a high run meter guy like some of these others like Tedesco or Ponga, and even Dylan Brown has way is almost similar scores just purely from run meters. I think that Latrell can fire if the Rabbitohs go well, but I think the early draw is a bit tough, and he's a lot of money to just spend up in for round 1.
Definitely. We'll go through the draw and the pack predictor in a sec, guys, when we're done with these. Shaq Mitchell at 380. He does have a fair bit of talent. He started the year pretty well last year and obviously fell away to a 27.5 average. Any thoughts on him, or is it just injuries needed?
Probably injuries needed. If Arrow is going to be permanently edge and Duncan remains at sort of 30, there might be some scope if Burgess sort of reduces his minutes throughout the year. But I mean, he's already nearly 400. Can you see him getting to 550? I don't know if I can.
Yeah, unlikely. David Moale, obviously 90K cheaper at 290 there. Any thoughts on him?
He's sort of like the Blake Moser of the Rabbitohs. It's like he's this fantastic guy. We're going to see him this year. It's going to be his year this year. I I really just have to see him start to do it first because he's been that 20 average guy playing limited minutes off the bench for a bit now. Maybe
Hmm.
it's next year when Burgess is gone. Maybe it's then, but I don't really have a lot of hope that he'll do significantly better this year.
Yeah, it's not like he comes out and absolutely dominates either. So the scope for minutes, it'd be hard to even find until he actually pushes and plays better, I think, anyway. But injuries have seemed to have plagued him a little bit. Tyron Munro at 350K. He's someone that I had in my team from ball one. And then the talk there of obviously Whiten's going to be missing the start of the season. So there's a good chance he plays, but it does sound like there's a very high chance that he is the one that gets a little bit more New South Wales Cup time and someone like Isaiah Tass ends up on that wing. That's kind of my worry there. You've got him as a risky cash cow / trap. Tell us your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, the scoring is there. He is a noted try scorer. He's very quick. I think that there is definitely some value in there if he holds that spot. But as we saw last year, they haven't really figured out who to quite put there yet. Munro's probably the future if they're not going to go out and buy that rugby bloke, Caleb Clark, at some point. But yeah, Tass is probably the unlucky one in all the situation from White and signing because he gets moved from his preferred position and has to go out and sit on the right wing or not at all. So one of those two is going to miss out. And look, you'd have to be a little bit brave to gamble on Munro holding that spot because, yeah, as you said, I think there is a bit of talk about him spending time at fullback, wasn't it, in Cup?
Yeah. Yeah,
Not
for
even
sure.
wing, just fullback.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure with him. Definite interest. He could definitely have that 10 points of value, and he's not too expensive. But yeah, we'll have to see on trials and how where he lines up in that trials compared to Isaiah Tass as well. I think will be important there. Cam Murray, the next guy on the list, he has been in and out of my team the last little bits. Excited for him to have a bit of a bounce back myself. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I just want to know minutes because Dimitri's saying, oh, yeah, we'll move him to edge to sort of give him a break. Does that mean still playing the same minutes and gets more of a break to sort of manage him? Or does that mean he's going to play less middle but on the park for more? So he's going to be on there for closer to 80 minutes. One of those means he's sort of going to maybe drop a little bit, and the other one probably pushes him up to a 60-point player or more. And I really would just love to know which one it is. So if we do get some clarity on that, it'd be great. I don't think we're going to see it in trials. Trials are for testing everyone out. He's not going to play 80 minutes in trials. So I think I'm probably going to watch and wait and maybe pick him up if he does get a good role, almost like a Horsburgh. It's like, does he get 65 or 70 minutes this year with how the team's going to line up and then quick buy, as in he'll shoot up to in the 800s and all that. But yeah, I mean, he's Cameron Murray. We know he's a gun. If you buy him, you can probably expect him to hit at least the mid 50s, if not higher.
For sure. It's gonna be interesting to see how the center position kind of ends up in our teams. That'll decide whether we can get that extra gun in the mids. I would say there for sure. Isaiah Tass there. Any further thoughts on him? Bit too expensive?
Yeah, he's priced nearly 40, and I'd say he'd do better as a center than a winger with the base. He'd need a few tries, and yeah, position and job security is a little bit weak. I think I've missed a couple of comments there, but yeah, I mean, overall, there's not much further up he can go, I'd say. So one to leave.
Definitely. Tavir Tola, the big guy on this list of 485. Kind of a that awkward in between a price, but we know his consistency. What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's a very safe 5 points of value with potential to go more,
Hmm.
but how much more is a matter of debate. So this was why pretty much the pack predictor took so long for me to sort out because I'm like, oh, Totola's going to play 50 minutes. He's played 50 minutes for a while. It's going to be all good. Just write him there and figure out everybody else. And everybody else sort of had to be squeezed in somewhere. So I think that he is in for a shout with 50 minutes in a lot of situations, such as there being a bench hooker if Marmos Ellis is there or Arrow starts on the edge. But if they run a 4 forward bench and Arrow is playing in the middle, I find it a little bit hard to get him up to fully 50 minutes. And even in sort of high 40s minutes, he'll still have 5 points of value. So he's not going to be an absolute bust, but how much ceiling does he have? I think he's a solid option and he's still in my team at the moment. But yeah, I'll be watching to see how the Rabbitohs do line up.
Yeah, okay. That's the biggest part of it, isn't it? Just trial and then see how they line up in that, and then see how they line up in round one. As if he's going to get those minutes or not, and if Mamzelis is there or something like that for sure. Isaac Thompson had a bit of a role last year, too expensive and probably out of order as well. Cody Walker 633. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, he's a funny one. He goes quiet and then he has these insane stretches where he averages like 60, 65 for a month and then just stops again. So I think he's probably more super coach relevant than fantasy relevant because in fantasy he's just never really been quite at keeper level.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he drops to 500 and the Rabbitohs go on a run,
Mm.
he could be a decent option to pick up at some stage, just not as slam dunk or safe as some of those basement pickups.
Yup, I like that. Just price watch him. And Jack Whiten at center looks like he's obviously not going to be there from round one, but is he just a watch across the first few rounds to see how he plays there? And
Yeah, I think so. It's really interesting because the last two games of last year, he averaged over 50 in those two center games without a try. So
yeah,
that was really exciting. I think that he will suit playing in centers quite well and could get some really solid attack on that side with his good running game. He might be the discount keeper we're looking for. We just won't know until a little bit later. And so obviously you can't start with him because he's not going to be there.
and he's not going to get dual until round seven. So wild. All right. Pack predictor, you do have Totola in there at 50 with 9 points of value, which is pretty cool. And then no one else really has any value in their positions. You've obviously got Cook there, who's a top tier gun. Murray as well, sitting there at 2.3 points of value, which is cool. And then you've got Duncan at 30 minutes. So yeah, if it's how we end up speaking about this pack, then no real value for anyone apart from Totola, right?
Yeah. Just speaking of how it's going to line up, it's this is the simplest arrangement I could sort of come up with. Splitting the edge just between Arrow and Murray, to total of 50 minutes, and everybody else sort of plays a part. The other alternatives they have are to possibly start Arrow at prop, put Burgess on the bench, kick one of the others out and put a host or Cheekham at edge. That makes the middle minutes a little bit more condensed. Or they could even do something like that and then split that edge spot three ways. Like they have host playing 50 minutes, Murray 15 minutes at edge, and Arrow 15 minutes at edge, and then like 30 minutes in the middle. So that just seems a little bit too convoluted for me. I don't
Mm.
think the Rabbitohs will try and do that. So I think it'll be one of those other two. And we just have to watch out where it all mixes together and how it lines up because Arrow is going to demand a fair bit of time on the field, and where it is could impact a couple of others.
Definitely. I have Kepi definitely the 17th man like yourself there. And I probably have Havili with more minutes than him. And he could be a Moali, he could be a Mamazelis. There's options there for Kepi there for sure. But again, if it was Moali, it's 20 or so minutes and it doesn't really help too many people anyway. Their early draw, they've got Manly, Broncos, Roosters to kick things off, but then Dogs, Warriors, Sharks before their bye in round seven. So their first two buys are split up there, round seven and round 13. So they are a fairly awkward type of team that if you don't start with them, like are you picking them up in around five, knowing that there's a buy in seven and then a buy in the first buy round, whether you're selecting any of their origin guys as well. They're missing 16, 17 as well. So that's 3 out of 6 rounds there. Sorry, 3 out of 5 rounds there that they're missing in that time as well. So it's a very interesting team to start with, hey?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting for someone like Damien Cook because we're not going to even if he does miss out on Origin, we're not going to have him for round 13.
Mm.
So
And
it's
17.
good in a way and bad in a way because it means we're going to have to go for other options for round 13. But if the Blues do decide to change it up, because they really don't know what to do with Hooker these days, hopefully with the new coach they do. Round 16, we might have a bit more certainty as to what's going to happen. Maybe that's the time to look for Cook if he's going to be there.
For sure. And yeah, you would have this draw as a slightly harder one / closer to the middle, considering they miss out on the Penrith Panthers, but they do have 3 away games to kick things off. One in Vegas, and then three home games in a row, 4, 5, and 6, which is pretty cool. But then after their bye in round 7, it's Storm into Panthers. So that first 9 rounds is fairly tough. So how would you look at this? Would you look at more middles there? Would you still think someone like Latrell Mitchell or Jack White and these types of guys aren't going to have too many issues?
Yeah, it's something that does put me off Latrell a little bit because, I mean, if Latrell's fit, he's always going to be in the mix for that origin spot, potentially at center. And yeah, that round 7 bye as well makes it tough. So I think that it's just a matter of how many points Rabbitohs can score because he's their goal kicker. If he's only kicking 2.5 goals a game for those first 7 rounds instead of 3.5 or 4, sort of pegs him back a bit. So I would go for these middle type of guys who are going to tackle their hearts out with the early season rust and the early tough one. So Totola does work out pretty well.
Mhm.
Murray might work out well depending on how his minutes work out.
Yep.
And for me, it's not too much interest to start the year. Cook could be good, but I just don't have a lot of faith in and certainty around his role.
For sure. And that's it for the Bunnies in this one, guys. The next one's going to be a fun one with the Canberra Raiders. Have a good one.